So, as I was saying, welcome to the December 7th Town Board Agenda meeting. I'm hereby open the meeting. And before we get started, I'm going to offer opportunity for privilege of the floor. So we do have Nate here at the town hall that wants to speak to us about his road designation issue and address issues. So, yeah.
Hello all, thanks for having me. I'm Nathan or Nate. And some of you I know, some of you are meeting for the first time. Thanks for having me. You probably received a message from Jesse. Thank you if you are there. With a little bit of my background, my story, I'm helping out a dear friend of mine, Carlin Gray. She's principal at DeWitt Middle School, multi-decade resident here in town. And she has a property up on Downey Road, and it formally has no address, and I'd like to get the ball rolling on getting the address. I spoke with Jesse, I spoke with you, Mark, I spoke with Corey, and the consensus was I should come to this meeting and at least get the ball rolling on whatever needs to be done to get an address for that property. So I'm happy to elaborate.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I will just reply briefly that, yeah, we can help you do that.
Wonderful.
The address assignment, as far as I know, is usually done by the code enforcement officer. And if he has questions about that, he will contact the county. Has a GIS person that can help with that. So I think we can help you with this fairly expeditiously.
Okay. And Corey, I've been interacting with Corey quite a bit.
Okay.
And after, I guess he talked with his people and, well, I talked with my people, the consensus was that I was to come here. So Corey is certainly aware of what I'm trying to do.
Okay.
So whatever I can do to help would be fantastic.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much. Appreciated your letter. So, I know you discussed the seasonal road issue. So yeah, so we can discuss that as well.
Fantastic. And I don't know if, first of all, if I'm using the right terminology, I hope I am. Second, I understand there are multiple meetings. I just want to kick things off with this meeting.
Sure. Okay. Great. Thank you. So I won't offer any other feedback at this point. If anybody else has anything they want to say or ask, that'd be fine. Great. Okay.
I was just curious why the landowner herself isn't initiating this.
That's a great question. I'm trying to lighten the load off of my dear friend Carlin, trying to do some of the legwork on this property of hers. And we're all busy people, but I'm trying to protect her time, and I have it, so I thought I'd do this groundwork.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Nathan. Yeah. Great. Okay. So moving on. We have Phil and Jim here from LaBerge to give us a report on the site assessment that they've been doing for the town. And so I'll open it for them unless, John, do you want to offer any opening comments?
No, other than what the board already knows, but for folks who aren't in our board chain, this is the preliminary draft report, phase 1 of the Highway Department building site evaluation process. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Phil and Jim, and thank you.
We have a PowerPoint presentation. We can walk through the project and some of the results. If you want to share the screen, I can.
Sure. So I did give you screen sharing abilities, I believe, Phil. Is that okay with you? You should,
Sure.
I know we had some problems last time, so let me know.
So well, I guess I'll just click on this. Can you see that?
Yeah, not yet.
Maybe. Okay.
If you,
I have to
Yeah.
click on share screen, right?
you should make sure the PowerPoint is open
It
on
is.
your computer. And then if you go down to the bottom of the Zoom panel, there should be a green box that allows you to share screen. When you click that, then there'll be a window that shows you a little icon of that document. And then click on that, it should pop up.
You see that?
Hang on.
I think so. Hang on. Yes.
There it is.
Looks good.
Yes, we can.
You're on, you're sharing your screen now. Great.
Oh, super. Okay. So this is somewhat automated. I hope it doesn't slow down and bore you, but this is the feasibility study for the new highway department, as John said. And the study does conclude with a recommendation for project implementation. And what you're seeing here is a picture of your existing highway facility. So, part of our tasks were, existing conditions assessment, gather some information, conduct interviews, and then perform some space programming, develop building concepts and, for the projected need for the next 30 to 40 years. And then we looked at the site, did a site analysis, and ultimately did a project funding look. And as you know, the facility is linked to the operations, and when that link gets weak, they have problems, which your facilities are very vital to the essential services you provide your residents. These facilities are over 50 years old. And, if you're looking at the New York State finance law, they establish probable periods of usefulness of 30 years for these buildings, these type of buildings. So well beyond their usefulness. So I'll just let you read that bullet there. I'm not going to read all these bullets. You can just read them as they come up. So as the structures age, you become more and more difficult to maintain. You spend more money on repairs and maintenance and not improving the effectiveness of the services you provide or the safety of the operations. Which is, this all gets into why you're doing this study, which of course you understand. We looked at 3 sites. The first site was the existing facility. The second one is the Perkins Road formal gravel mine. Those first 2 sites are town-owned, and the third one was suggested to look at was the one that's about a half mile west of the current site. It's vacant road. It's adjacent to the Brooktondale Fire Department. I think I'm getting lost here. Here's the first site. Some of the existing conditions you're going to see here rolling. It's in the office, the break room area. And some of the, the crowded storage conditions you've got in the office. So the next couple slides are going to review the some of the existing conditions here. This is the salt storage shed and the cold storage. This is your fuel station with the, some more cold storage buildings on the left-hand side of that slide. And I'd just like to note that newer facilities or existing facilities that my experience with New York State DEC, they like to see these things covered with a canopy in case you have do have a like an incidental spill. It's easier to clean up. It doesn't, become contaminated with or rainwater doesn't land on that and contaminate the stormwater runoff. So this is a little bit beyond the times here. Should be updated. Again, here's one of your cold storage barns. Again. So here are the three possible sites that we looked at. Valley Road, existing site, Perkins, and the other Valley Road site. And there's the existing site. You can see some of the features that are kind of flying in here with text. Boyce Creek, we talked about last time, is does have a flood zone. If you're looking at this, it's the yellow portion is it's indicated here is the 100-year flood limits as defined by FEMA right now. There is a study ongoing that will update the flood zone and tighten that up to more like the green area. So right now, technically, you do have some cold storage and the fuel station in the flood zone. And don't worry too much. This is the Perkins Road site. It does have some constraints with steep slopes in the back. It's a formal gravel mine, which does require some more grading than the other sites would. Other than that, it is town owned. Valley Road site is not town owned, it's a private parcel, but it does offer the potential for future space, open space for the town if they did acquire the entire parcel. You could acquire a lesser piece of that with subdivision, but I would think for the potential cost of that, it would be a good choice to buy the whole site and use some of that for open space, and which is in line with your comp plan. Then we get into space programming. This is the Jim's effort in interviews and data collection from the town, in which he developed the square footage that's required for the vehicle maintenance repair area and the office personnel areas. And that totals out to be almost 23,000 square feet. Jim, do you want to add anything or no?
No, it's pretty self-explanatory. The square footages involved are based on, and we'll touch upon that in a future slide here, but are based on a drive-through kind of diagram for the storage of the highway equipment and vehicles. And that's simply drive in one side and drive out the other, rather than a center aisle where you drive in the end and then peel off from a center space. Those types of diagrams are probably 50%, 60% more inefficient because it requires all that site, all the vehicle circulation space to be undercover. Means it's more expensive to build, more expensive to maintain, heat, utilities, etc. So.
Okay. So in looking at the sites, we did some of the considerations we looked at, areas we looked at. Site number one would utilize the upper portion of the site for the new developments and maintain the lower part of the site for material storage. Second site, the Perkins Road site, would just use the entire area that's available for the new highway garage, salt shed, fuel station and material storage. And then the third site, again, all those items. And here are the floor plans, the schematic level floor plans that were developed. Kind of a snapshot of what we're looking at. Jim, do you want to offer anything or?
No, similar to what the brief discussion I just had related to vehicle storage, and the circulation of the vehicles is all outside and not being undercover or heated, etc. The diagram of the building itself shows that it would be relatively simple to zone the building mechanically to maintain lower ambient air temperatures, for example, for vehicle and equipment storage versus occupied space for shop areas, office areas, and those kind of things. That helps you become more energy efficient in the long run, and quite frankly, it has less impact on the building over 30 to 50 years. So one of the things that probably could be eliminated initially would be the wash bay that you see on the right hand side. W there, I think so. It's good to wash the vehicles down from road salts and all those kinds of things that once a week, for example. If you want to do it more frequently than that, then hose bibs and wash stations can be positioned in between every other storage bay of vehicles. Yeah, Phil's pointing, yeah, right. Around the center column kind of area, pretty easy. So it's a way to save a little bit of money because the automation of the wash bay itself, fairly expensive, but does a much better job than hand washing by the individual truck drivers. Oh, they're
Do you want us to ask questions at the end or as we go?
Doesn't matter.
I just had a question, yeah. So I see the vehicles, there's an arrow saying which way they go through the building.
Yes.
So is the intent that there would only be one, I guess, so you just move a vehicle to move another one through if you had to? Is that the way it would work?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but the diagram in front of you is 2 bays deep. That gives you the ability to move a vehicle in or out of the building in either direction.
Okay.
So you could back on.
The other major difference between center aisle and this type of diagram is that you'll have multiple overhead doors at each one of these bays on both sides versus the center aisle one, which would have an overhead door at the front and overhead door at the back. But we at one point had looked at a 3 bay deep storage facility. And some of the negative comments were that, you landlock a vehicle and that's probably the one Murphy's Law, that's probably the one you want to use on a particular day. So that a 2 bay deep allows you to access any vehicle anytime, front or back.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Next slide will presents the 3 concepts here with a summary of the estimated costs. It's been updated since our last report. Got a little bit better information on the cost of a salt shed, and it kind of drove the prices up here a little bit. Overall, it's they're pretty close in price. So it kind of comes down to function of the sites, but here's the first concept for site 1, or the concept for site 1, some of the key features and some of the limitations, like a steep access grade is not very desirable. Retaining wall would be required for this, not very desirable. We did manage to get the site to fit with a bypass, a new well, fuel station. And then basically the rest of the area up in the upper portion gets used for septic system and stormwater management, aside from the pavement in the building. The lower area would be used for material storage, and I guess you use this side of the Boyce Creek also for material storage.
Yeah, you can see from this diagram that there's significantly that's okay, Phil. Significantly limited yard space around the highway garage. In the existing, the other component to the development of the existing is the disruption of services while you actually go through construction. So,
Yeah.
Was there any consideration of possible expansion of the town-owned property there that could change the perspective as far as area available for either now or the future?
I'm not sure you totally get what you're getting at, but if you try to take this building footprint and stuck it down here, really wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to get the cars or trucks behind the building. So it'd be like a pull in and stacked and kind of a structure, and and then operationally you'd be driving from this side of the creek to this side to get some materials, or maybe the salt shed would go over here now, or and this would be, I guess you could keep using this for the material storage area. Oops.
well, it's certainly an option that you could acquire more space, land area to surround the highway garage, but all that would do is begin to, increase the cost of development. But again, it's certainly an option. We just didn't consider it, mainly because we get the various functions to fit on the existing plot.
Right, okay.
Right.
I think the closest mark we came to considering that was last year when we were looking at the horse farm area. That would probably be the most sort of in line with what you're thinking.
Okay. Something to chew on. Thank you.
Perkins Road site, dark brown area material storage. It's beating me to the punch here.
Got to talk faster, Phil.
Well, I think you guys can read that. Some of the limitation here is the steep slope in the back. So kind of, even though you have all this area to work with, you do have to slope up to the existing grades up here. So that kind of cuts down on your usable area, but it all works. You have material storage area here, salt shed.
A lot of that rough grading area could be done by the town forces, for example, or the highway department. So, it's a way to save some money by having your own forces do some of the, what I'll say, site prep type work and that kind of stuff. So it's important to keep that in the back of your mind when we were thinking about budgets as well.
Yeah, so site one is very constricted area. Site two here is better, but we're on a former gravel mine, so we got highly permeable soils, which means you're going to have some issues with the septic system design, and you could end up with a pretty expensive septic system. And yeah, you would have to do a lot of regrading, but like Jim said, you could do that with town forces. But,
Is that included in your numbers, the septic system?
I think we carried a nominal amount. I don't think I bumped it up anything significant. So probably the answer is probably no.
But again, in the big scheme of things, the additional cost for the septic system wouldn't be, a showstopper. So that's probably why we kind of left it the way it was. And
Okay.
the only way to test that out, to give you a really honest engineering answer to that is to have some soil borings done so we can, you know, submit it to engineering and see what kind of system would be required.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yep. The third site is, so one of the things that when I was doing this concept was to kind of like have the flow of to material storage, just keep a straight shot. But like I said, the last time we met, the material storage could go over here. Just means you need to acquire a different piece of property if you only wanted to acquire property for the highway facilities. But I think in the long run, you might want to look at acquiring the whole parcel to advance your comp plans, open space objectives. This does have a better grade. Stan corrected it from the last meeting. This is like a 4% grade, so it's a really nice drive up to the site, in and out. Oops, I'm sorry. So this material storage could go over here, I guess, so you wouldn't have to be doing all this grading.
Yeah, what we're attempting to show here is, you know, kind of a minimal amount of site area that you would need to acquire. Obviously, you'll probably pay a higher price when you begin to cut up parcels like this. So maybe it's best to purchase the entire parcel and then free up the diagram, for example, to really study. How large is this one, Bill? 47?
The total parcel, I think it's like 42 or something like that.
I was just guessing. I
Yeah.
get old,
So,
so I forget things.
So I think we gotta find the estimates. Yeah, so we
Can I just add regarding your emphasis on the comp plan that I find this a little bit paradoxical in terms of this site, because this is the one site that I would think does not conform with our comp plan.
I agree with
Because
that.
instead of using two different sites that have already been disturbed, we would be disturbing a completely open space. So I would, in terms of your site selection recommendation, I would have given this site the lowest number in relationship to the comp plan, much lower than our current site. So I was just interested in that evaluation.
Mhm.
And I can understand how you can fudge it by saying, if you buy the entire parcel, you'll have more open space, but we have that open space.
It's just not town owned. I mean, it's not reserved for the town, so. Okay, I don't think it really,
Good point.
it's a good point, yeah. I'm just one engineer, so. So here you go, and then you got try to do some kind of a site selection criteria here, where one would be the least desirable, where the three would be the best, given that criteria that's on this side of the column over here. And down here, you mentioned, Timothy, that, this should be a 1, and these should be 2s perhaps. But, it still ends up that, you end up at site 3 as being the best. If you agree with all these criteria and the way I've ranked them, totally subjective.
Would it be okay? Would you mind if I asked you just a little bit about the facility space program, what you're calling the facility space program, in terms of the heft of the 16 bays? I mean, I'm wondering, was there any comparative analysis done of comparable highway barns in the region? I mean, this seems like an awfully big highway barn to me for a small town in terms of 16 bays. I'm just wondering about that, thinking cost-wise, where that figure came from.
Okay, well, the short story is the more vehicles and pieces of equipment you can put in environmentally controlled space, the longer you're going to get it to last. you could probably take half the number of bays that we're showing in these diagrams and put them in cold storage. In other words, covered space, for example, outdoors, but no heat, for example. That's cost effective, but still has a negative impact on the vehicles because they're still subject to, blowing snow and all those kinds of things during the course of the winter. So the most difficult part of all of these types of projects is to strike that balance between budget and return on investment for, buying a $350,000 truck, for example, and putting it outside, or a brush hog, or those types of things. It's strictly, we took what I'll say is the best case scenario to protect your assets and put them all under cover. Very few municipalities can actually do that. But we wanted you to start with the idea of this is the best way to protect the assets, and maybe it's in the interest of everybody to get to the second best. But for the purposes of evaluating the sites, et cetera, each vehicle and piece of equipment takes a certain amount of space, put it in a diagram and see if it works in the site area. That's the long and short.
I'd add to that, Tim, that part of it was in discussion with the highway department and what they see as some of the needs, particularly with our current facility, which can't house all the vehicles well and has very, very tight space constraints. So part of this is looking at how do we not only modernize, but to some degree possible future-proof the facility.
If the, a related question that I have, if, let's just say hypothetically, the facility was a third of the size, would that have affected your ranking of the sites at all? I'm just thinking, say, of the current highway barn site. Would that have made it more easier to build, or is that irrelevant?
Well, I think you're only looking out a 10 years into the future. It's probably, you can build it that smaller building, but right, Jim, we're looking at 30 years here, the next 30 years for planning purposes. And so, I mean, that's the criteria. So you're looking with this bigger building on these sites.
Yeah, you're touching upon some other interesting aspects to the diagram that you're looking at for the building. In other words, Tim, maybe you do build a third of it now, and the other 2/3 of it in terms of vehicle storage is cold storage. In 5
Or
years,
even two-thirds of it now.
okay, or right. But my point is, it's an expandable diagram. So if the only thing you can fund right now is a third, then that's what you start with. But you start with a diagram that can actually build into the future, and you've got some master plan on a site that accepts all the components that you'll need for 50 years.
That's really helpful. Thanks.
I'm gonna go back to this slide here. Which is, this is the programming we went through, right? Which,
one of the things that hasn't really been discussed, it was during the interviews and those kind of things, are the shop space, the shop tools, the equipment necessary for your staff to properly maintain the fleet of this size, all of the trucks and equipment, et cetera, in a space that provides a safe working environment for them to do that. That's one of the biggest, what I'll say, priorities, if you will, in a lot of these types of projects. The sophistication of the equipment and vehicles that will be developed in the next 30 to 50 years, half of your staff probably doesn't have the technical ability to maintain it. So a lot of those kind of services will need to be contracted out, et cetera, as you know, the techniques of moving snow and ice and building roads becomes even more sophisticated.
When the
It's just-
robots do it all.
Well, true, robots can do an awful lot. I say this a lot to a lot of the clients that we have. I'm totally amazed at how well your staff maintains its fleet and extends the useful life of its vehicles and equipment well beyond what is recognized in the industries. You know, I'd still be driving my 1957 Volkswagen if they could maintain it as well as your staff maintains the truck. No, I wouldn't. But anyway, the safety issues are part of this too, which led to locker shower facilities, proper shop areas, tools, repair tools and parts, accommodating for holiday decorations in a storage facility, for example. You know, ways to accommodate all that stuff, which are
That's a-
important to the culture of the town.
Well, the most
Um,
shocking thing about our current facilities, from my point of view, when I toured it, was precisely the lack of facilities for storage and tools
Right.
and repair. It's just, I come from a highway family. I just couldn't believe my eyes.
Yeah, and the safety concerns really were initially what sort of sparked this whole direction. So,
This is heavy equipment and requires some pretty heavy duty equipment to service it, you know, to lift some of the plows up and the racks, and what do you do with the bodies and the dumps, et cetera? How do you maintain the hydraulics? And it's pretty difficult work. So you're right, watching them work in the environment they currently work is pretty telling. They do quite a job.
Yeah, I think the town board's on board with all of this, so.
All right. I talked myself to the end, Phil, aren't you glad?
So, while Jim was talking, you saw this slide transition that, you know, while you're building a new facility, whether it's on this site or the Perkins Road site, and, you know, assuming you're not going to develop the first site, because I think it's really constricted, you maintain your operations while this is being built. And then once this is built, you can then demolish these old buildings, abate them and demolish, and then you can dispose of the land if it's of any value, but to anybody, you can get something back on that land. There are several funding sources that are available to make the project happen. This is just a listing of a couple of these. Probably USDA direct loans are the best choice right now. You've got some action here with the ARPA.
So I'm interested in that, Phil. So we could use ARPA funds for this, is that right?
Yeah, it's complicated, and I'm not an expert in that. If you decide to start the funding process, Ben Seiden of our office is an expert at this, and our grants people, and we can start talking with you about that, and what
Okay,
makes the most sense. Sometimes you do a couple of these. You know, this is a new one. I think I've just heard about is the congressional direct spending. So I guess you put in your request to your congressman, and that looks like I'm getting an update.
Yeah, keep in mind that a lot of these facilities are funded by a number of grant programs for pieces. And so you put all the pieces together and where you can best obtain funds. So,
Excuse
I
me.
think Ben refers to as a
What's the,
funding source.
yeah. Can you hazard a I know you can't promise anything, but what might we, as a proportion of the cost, what might we expect or hope for through grant funding based on typical projects? Is that a fair question?
We did that analysis for Hector, and I can't remember what we, do you remember that?
I knew you were going to ask me that, Phil.
I can get you that answer, but I don't know if I can put my finger on it right now.
Okay, that'd be great.
It could, you could like get a couple million from USDA. And then I don't know how the other percentages or the other sources would be. Some of that's direct money from your Congress.
Okay.
So
So that's
a couple million there. You might end up with half of your funding through those sources. I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think on the high side that, typically if you can get 50% funding through grant programs and these types of avenues, then you're doing pretty well.
Okay,
So the other 50% would be on the taxpayer.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and this table is the breakdown of some of the costs, how we got to. Everything's the same, the highway garage, fueling, salt, site development is where you start changing differences in construction costs. Site abatement, that applies to the existing site, taking some of those out of service and demolishing them. And then the third site has property acquisition cost, that's based upon the current assessed value for the whole 40+ acres.
That's kind of a guess, isn't it, Phil?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. No, I mean, no formal.
No
Inquiries were
comparative
made
sales or anything
for a
like
lot
that.
of reasons.
It's just assessed value.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. So the project would progress as these next couple of bullets are going to show you. You accept the project and you authorize professional services to do the groundwork with surveys and site design.
Yeah, and special testing needs to be done, for septic, soils, those kinds of things. Those are certainly activities that can move ahead independent, but it requires you to pick a site. So that's the whole value of the feasibility study, is to start focusing in on a particular property and then start getting more and more detailed information related to that to confirm a lot of these types of costs.
Yep, and then task 3 is can be phased, go through schematic designs, 30%, 40% design level plans and advance it so you can design your structures the way you ultimately want them and bring them within cost too. Along the way, you're doing cost estimates through task 3 different phases. And concurrent with all this, you should be looking to secure grant fundings and loans. So this stuff should start as soon as you can.
The time frame on securing grants and funding, 6 months, a year?
I think we're talking like a year. Am I sounding correct there, Jim?
Yeah.
About a year from the time you start to you'll get the funds. But a lot of these would also require this. Whoops, I'm sorry. These grants and loans will require a lot of the tasks 1, 2, and 3 to be advanced quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, prior to construction, permitting, and then you bid and award and construct it. So you're a few years out on that process.
Yeah, in the best of times, that's a reasonable, projection of you you get focused right now as to a site. You begin some of the preliminary studies and grants, et cetera. And it takes a while to put that together to answer all of the questions by the taxpayer and town board. And they get to a point to say go. Then you're into full-blown engineering and procurement. That's also kind of a crapshoot these days with material availabilities, the cost of material. And it doesn't, there's no sacred component to all this too. So it's really kind of an interesting time to be looking at a project of this nature. I think you'd find a significantly aggressive bidding market. But again, that's hard to tell. There are some contractors that are no longer around. They've lost people, et cetera. So.
Or they just can't get them. Jim, do you have any idea, maybe it's jumping way too far ahead, what type of structure it would be? You know, pole barn type thing or masonry or? I mean,
essentially, we would, but do typically recommend pre-engineered building systems. And that generally is steel, metal, and base of exterior walls being masonry, for example, because they're the ones that can take the kind of abuse that highway facilities typically run into. They're also very efficient systems, cost-effective systems, because you're not reinventing the wheel. A pole barn over a certain period of time will just begin to, the wood will lose some fiber stresses, et cetera, and begin to sag and warp, et cetera. And so the long term is a pre-engineered metal building, clad with both masonry and metal exterior materials, same with metal roofing, those types of things.
thank you.
They're also a little bit easier to build related to the fire code requirements in terms of sprinkler systems and all that kind of stuff. So, yes.
Great. Other questions?
Yeah, one last thing, sorry to interrupt. All of these structures, we highly recommend a radiant heat floor. Your heating source is simply hot water. And your distribution system in a floor is relatively impact resistant. It's not like having overhead infrared heaters and perimeter baseboards and all that kind of stuff that can be hit by any number of things. So it's also a very efficient system. And you can zone it out any way you want in terms of environmentally what you want to create in the building.
You found that the weight and the circulation of the trucks don't impact that system over the long haul?
Say it again. I'm sorry.
You found that there aren't weight issues with the number of trucks in circulation running over a heated system?
No, this concrete slab is designed essentially anywhere from 3,500 to 4,000 PSF or PSI concrete. The tubes are, half-inch, 3/4 inch diameter plastic tubes buried in this over a mat of reinforcement, steel reinforcement. So
I have one of those systems, so I know it, but I just am surprised that the weight of the trucks wouldn't impact that somehow.
No. And the real value is you can extend it out into the aprons of the overhead doors to keep those free of snow and ice as well. So.
I'm wondering about, Jim, what, have you done highway garages that have employed geothermal heating and cooling systems?
We have not yet, but that's certainly a viable system to be used. It would take some studies. And part of the studies, as I mentioned earlier, there are special tests like soils reports, et cetera, that will help confirm the impact of those types of systems. But yeah, they're certainly possible. It's certainly possible to look at wind and solar and other types of energy sources if you want to go into those kind of modes. One of the points I made earlier about diagram for the building being center aisle versus drive-through, the smaller enclosure that you can build, the easier it is for you to maintain. And quite frankly, easier it is, less costly it is to deal with heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems.
Great. Other questions for Phil or Jim? Anybody? Great. Well, thank you so much. That was a nice run through of your analysis.
So if I would, I just, in order to wrap up this report, if you have, maybe John, you can give us a list of coordinated comments that you'd like to see addressed or items changed in the report, such as the weighting of the open space from a 2 to a 1, something like that.
That'd be fine. Yeah, folks
That
on
way
the
we
board.
wrap this up, or, maybe give you a further explanation on maybe some of the funding or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah, if folks want to forward any of those items, if you have any to me, that'd be great. I'll compile them and send them out.
Okay.
I've got
Great.
maybe just one question, if I may.
Nate has a question.
On the analysis of it's a 1, 2, or 3 scale for all of the individual criteria. It looks like they all have the same weighting. I don't know if there's one, hey, if we can get it done quicker, that's a more valuable. So instead of a scale of 1 to 3, it's actually a scale of 1 to 6. Does that make sense to you?
It's, it's totally arbitrary on my part as just setting up the criteria and the weighting. You can set it up any way you want, and you could even skew this to come out the way you want it to come out. I mean, I tried to be
Well,
fair
that's-
about it. So,
I'm, from my point of
Yeah.
view, we have enough information for the relative weighting to give us,
Yeah, it's only a mechanism to try to give you
been
a
discussions about it, so I wouldn't think that would have.
I'm
Ballpark.
just a little interested though in the project next steps section.
I didn't get the,
I'm a little bit, I'm myself am interested in the project next step sections. You've got, some brief outlines here.
Bill, you want to address that?
Were those the ones he just showed there?
Well,
well, I mean, share the screen again, or I can just read off of the list I have here in front of me. The next steps would be that you accept this report. That closes this part 1 of the contract or service agreement, whatever you want to call it. Part 2 is the professional services part of the project. And you would authorize us to proceed with tasks 1, 2, 3, which is surveys, geotechnical investigations, preliminary designs of stormwater and buildings, in which we would, we'd have several meetings with you to define what goes into the building in a concrete, no pun intended, but concrete manner, and to give you cost estimates along the way here to see if we're in the project budget, or whether or not we need to start value engineering a few things out, or whether or not we can put something in, like the wash bay. Maybe that goes out the window right away, or you have feel you're comfortable with the budget and you keep it in the project. So those are the next steps. Those are the initial next steps that would happen. town closes this phase, this part of the project, starts the next part, which is professional services, site investigations and designs, and commence with the
Well, it seems to me there's a little
the
bit of
funding.
the chicken egg thing too of, well, site 3, is it, is it for sale at what price? I mean, it's the little bit of inquiry I've done, it is for sale, but things change or prices are maybe not within the ballpark of what you put out as an estimate.
So that's on us to figure out, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Yes,
But I mean, it's just, if it's not for sale or not for sale at a price that we're gonna, then we're back to considering site 1 and 2.
I'm
Right,
considering all
so-
the sites right
So
now.
part 2A, if you will, would be to acquire that property or get a option to buy it. To lock it in so that when we do task 1, the site surveys and geotech investigations, you're not wasting your money, right? So otherwise if you should, yeah, definitely should determine whether you can acquire that property first. Good point.
Yep, that's the place to start. So,
What?
somebody,
Great, okay. So I think we should move on. So
We're gonna be here all night anyway.
thanks so much. Phil
maybe
and
you
Jim.
are.
Yeah, maybe you are, not the rest of us. So again, appreciate your presentation. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you all. Be
Thanks so much,
safe.
guys. Talk to you soon.
All right. So moving on into the agenda.
Mark, can I just
The
ask what the plan is for discussion about that? Obviously, tonight is a very, very full agenda, so I don't want to disrupt it, but when do you propose that we have a board discussion about the presentation?
Are you suggesting a discussion tonight to follow up, Catherine?
No,
I'm sorry, couldn't hear you all.
I am not suggesting tonight the very agenda, but I'm wondering what your proposed, I mean, I would imagine we're going to have a board discussion about that presentation. I'm wondering when that might be.
Yeah,
Or
I
is
think
that not
that,
part of the plan? I don't know.
I think there are two pieces, actually. Like, one of them is gathering any questions that the board might have to inform any revisions to the final report. And then I would say probably the next bit would be discussing the presentation and the final report. And that could happen either at our next meeting or in January, I suppose. I wouldn't be part of that one, but you could discuss it.
You could always come to the meeting.
You could. And I might, but
that makes sense, John, what you said to me. Does that seem okay, Catherine? Is that,
Sure, yep, sure.
yeah, great, okay. Great, so with that, I will now introduce, offer a motion to introduce a local law to opt out of allowing cannabis on-site consumption as authorized under Cannabis Law, Article 4. And so I'll put that forward for discussion. And I know we've had some email discussion amongst ourselves about the two things that a town can opt out of by the end of this year, if they wish to opt out, are dispensaries and or on-site consumption places. And so that's what we're considering based on our previous our previous discussions. The draft of the local law I put forward was for places of on-site consumption, but then I've been wondering if, basically because we're trying to do this in order to understand the regulatory framework that is still maturing, and the state document from the Office of Cannabis Management, or I think that's the name of it. Anyway, they said exactly that the regulatory framework is maturing. So I'm just putting that out for consideration, and I'm interested in what people think.
I agree. I think our understanding was that you could not opt, in order to have most flexibility opting out and in, we needed to right now opt out. So long as that's
Correct.
still the correct understanding, then I would, yeah, be in favor of opting out of both, giving flexibility to both. And then also just adding that little bit of language that I mentioned over email, the changing like the if and when, so that it wasn't
If,
a
when.
foregone conclusion. Yeah,
Right. Thank you. I did get that. Yep.
that's all I have on that.
If we do opt out of both, I think that one of the things that we would want to do really vigilantly in the next few months is keep an eye on both how the state is developing its regulations and also what the temperature of the gold rush looks like, in the sense that if we anticipate opting into dispensaries, I frankly would think that it wouldn't be in our best interest to wait too long to do that. Otherwise, the dispensaries will just be put in adjacent towns, and we lose that tax revenue that's going to be generated in any case. So that's just my thinking about this. But I can see why it could be prudent to begin by opting out, just so we can see what's going on.
I feel a little
Okay.
differently. I'm sort of split. I, out of the gate, was sort of okay with both, and I've rethought a little bit about consumption. I think there are probably still some things to be worked out, although as Nancy says, we can't even get a good bar in this town. So maybe it's not a big issue, actually. I would be inclined to opt out of consumption for the moment, but I can't yet find a compelling reason to opt out of dispensaries.
Okay. Thanks, John.
I guess I just allow time and opt out for both. Initially, I didn't feel, I felt we should permit dispensaries and opt out of places of consumption, but just to see how it fleshes out, how the regulations work. I think from my note, just how things are put forward is one thing, but how they're implemented is another. And, you know, there'd be nothing built special purpose because there's a moratorium on. And there, you know, maybe possibly places would pick up selling it that exist in town for a dispensary. But yeah, like Tim's saying, you know, let's keep an eye on it. You know, if we can opt in 6 months, because everything seems to be going fine, let's opt in June. If things aren't going well, and you know, just give it a little more time and just keep an eye on it.
Mhm.
I mean, in some ways, you know, did we learn nothing from prohibition? But
I think all of us, yeah, I think it's unanimous that we all expect that at the end of the day, you know, we're going to opt in for both on-site consumption and
in time, yeah.
dispensaries.
I just like to see how the rules work out.
But I do feel I feel compelled to advocate for opting out of both, just based on the rationale of waiting until we really understand the regulatory framework and better, and as the state works things out. And we have the ability then to opt in at any time based on what we see happening, so.
I mean, one of the things that's still not clear, and we've asked Nan, who's the planner working on the zoning commission about this, is whether the dispensaries are going to be this, apparently it still hasn't been determined whether they're going to operate under ag law or under commercial law. And that in of itself would make a really big difference for us in terms of.
Depends whether you grow it or buy it.
No, this has to do with the dispensaries.
I know, I'm just,
Yeah. But so that's one of the things.
I'm just
that-
trying to be a smart ass.
Especially as we approach whatever
Yeah.
recommendations come from the zoning commission, that would be good to know, but I'm a little bit mixed one way or the other about opting in or opting out on dispensaries at this point, but I can see the logic of opting out. As long as we're ready to opt in at a minute's notice. I guess another question that I have, Mark, which is procedural. What do we have to do to opt in? Because to opt out, we have to pass a town law.
I believe,
to opt
yeah, I believe what I saw is that you rescind the law, so yeah, so I don't think it's a difficult process. It may be
Okay.
a reciprocal local law, but I don't anticipate it would be a
Okay.
big deal.
So it's probably even less complicated than opting out. Okay.
Yeah. Great, okay, so with that, I'm gonna
Rewrite the rule.
offer a resolution to amend the draft local law as we to include both dispensaries and on-site consumption. And I will also add the if-when language to the second paragraph of legislative intent right there that Catherine suggested. So do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Catherine seconded it there,
Okay, good.
and any further discussion? Great, no further discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Okay, thanks, everybody. So with that, I will offer a motion to set the public hearing for this local law at the beginning of our business meeting on December 15th. And that'll be at 7 p.m. Do I have a second on that? John seconded. And no further discussion. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I also, I got the information about this marijuana law from Lori Methven at Association of Towns. So she sent me a document on adopting local law. So one of the things is that I have to put the law on your desks for your consideration. And one of the ways you can do that, since I don't really have ready access to your desks, and
The desk is right here.
but it is right there. So you can do it by email. It has to be sent by PDF. So it says that you need a resolution. So I will offer a resolution authorizing delivery of local laws to the town council by email.
Second.
And so do I have a second on that? Second by Catherine. And I'll also let you know that this resolution has to be adopted unanimously in order to enable me to do this. So if there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. So all in favor?
So we could pocket veto you.
You could what?
We could pocket veto you, huh?
You could, and then I would be mailing you the local laws by actual paper mail. All right, so
Foolish
I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't hear anything. Thank you for that unanimous vote. I guess I'm getting a little wonky following all these town government process things. So
That's good.
great.
It's so thrilling. It's hard not to.
What's that? Okay, so we adopted the resolution to set the public hearing, correct?
Yes.
So great. So I'll move on and open the floor for committee reports.
I guess since I have a lot, I'll go first.
Okay.
I think I'll begin with the court. There have been some communications with the court. You'll notice that today the court sent you, I believe, sent us all a report. And that came out of my sending them two separate requests to clarify, to verify and to clarify the fact that they suddenly switched from 2-day court Monday and Tuesday to 1-day court Monday. That wasn't clear even in their report. And reported to Mark by the court clerk is that the judges were going to rotate weeks. In the report that they gave us today, there was a little bit of ambiguity about that, although I have a hard time imagining how they could both be at the bench at the same time. But that's just why that report that you received came, because I asked for that information because it was kind of unexpected that they would change the court times, and it wasn't actually announced to the public until the second week that they had done it. The other side of this is the issue of our key policy. And we thought we had that resolved at the meeting that we had in September. I had thought that we had it resolved. I think it's accurate to say that the two attorneys who were there agreed that state town law provides authority over buildings and access to buildings to the town, so that it makes sense to have a set of keys available for emergencies, especially because we had these incidents in the fall with the inaccessible breaker and the fire department not being able to get into the judge's office to evaluate safety. But anyway, so Mark has requested the set of keys, and unfortunately that has never materialized. So that's kind of at a standstill. So it appears that I guess we could say we're kind of back to square one. And as you noticed in today's communication from the court, I seem to be the new fall guy for all of this. So they would like to replace me as liaison, which frankly is fine by me. But they don't get, they wouldn't make that decision, the board would. So I think that kind of summarizes. I just wanted to give you the background of where that communication from the court came from, what the context was. Maybe we can discuss that, and then I'll give a very brief report about the zoning commission.
Am I remembering correctly that Guy was in that discussion?
Mhm.
Correct, yes.
I might advise you to ask Guy to summarize that conversation for the court in the context of the request. As a reminder.
And it is true that after the meeting, we were promised by the court's attorney, Shapiro. I don't know. I guess Shapiro is not a judge, he's just an attorney. So Attorney Shapiro, he would provide a summary of the meeting, which he never did. Mark wrote a summary of the meeting from our perspective and sent it to all the parties. And Mark, you did that, I think, within a week after the meeting, really quite quickly.
A week
And
later.
we never received a response either from Shapiro or from the judges indicating that they had any disagreement whatsoever from the report that we gave. So there have been communications on our side to the justices. And I'll also just say personally that I know that Mark has really held back in terms of addressing the key issue because it really has to be resolved as soon as possible. But he's, to his credit, he has, as I said today, twisted himself into pretzels over this. But that's just kind of where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like every reasonable step at this point's been taken to resolve whatever the concern was, including a meeting where it sounded like there was actually some consensus and progress. But there doesn't seem to be any follow through.
Yeah, I should add that we got a conciliatory, what we thought was a conciliatory email from Judge Barr 2 weeks ago, Mark, probably, regarding the court's intention to work with the town clerk to adjudicate the storage space.
Mhm.
So we took that as a really, really positive sign. So I actually was quite surprised by the communication that came today in the wake of that.
Yeah.
So that's where we stand, folks.
So I guess I'll just mention, I did copy you all when I did let the court know that I had scheduled key work and key changes. Excuse me, they must not be plugged in.
Oh, I think that's. Looks like this guy needs to go into there.
Oh, wow.
I think you're back in business now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There
There you go.
So, yeah, great. I copied you on the email where I let the court know that I had scheduled the key work for the 22nd. I think that I looked back today, it was on the 19th. And I scheduled it when the court clerk would be in so that they would have assurance of no, records were tampered with or with at risk or whatever. And so the morning came and Ace arrived. The court clerk did not arrive, so it got to be about noon. So I called the court clerk and she said that she was not coming in because she wasn't feeling well. And so, I asked if she if the public had been notified. No, and actually a young woman came at noon for a scheduled court appointment. And so I sent the technician from the locksmith back. That cost us $85. And so, that was a disappointment. So I haven't done anything since then, but open to constructive suggestions, so.
I would, again, recommend talking to our attorney about it to get his take on it, since it escalated to a meeting with attorneys.
Sure, okay. Great.
My only comment on all of this is that if we're not already, I mean, I know we have this in email chain form, but I think really documenting all of this so that we have a really clear paper trail, because what I want to avoid, I mean, it would seem like we were all coming to resolution. Of course, that now doesn't seem to be the case, but I know I think we'd all really like to avoid this continuing to drag out. And it seems like, I mean, I've only been on the board since February, but even starting then, there was this kind of protracted history. And I think now, I mean, like in hindsight, we're all like, how did we get to this point? So I think now, before we're at another point 2 years from now, where we say, how did we get to this point? I just want to really advocate for timely and, if necessary, decisive action on this, because this just is such a terrible waste of everybody's time and resources. And so I'm definitely firmly seconding John's recommendation to consult with Guy. And I guess just on top of that, to say that this is just like a completely untenable situation.
I'll just mention which I didn't remember to mention, Catherine, is Mark did consult Guy about the key situation, right, Mark? And didn't Guy say change the locks? Or am I confusing that with something else?
He has said that, yes. So, yeah. He was actually, he thought I should have changed them quite a long time ago. So, but he also recognizes that it's gotten to be quite a silly situation and untenable, as you aptly characterized it, Catherine.
Or you change them and then they change them back.
But they don't have the authority to do that. And so then that's what I'm talking about with like documenting this. I mean, if this were a regular personnel situation, there would be consequences and possible termination. But because it's not a traditional personnel situation, that's where we are. So, I mean, this is just outrageous.
Guy did recommend procedures for doing an end around so that they wouldn't be able to change the locks. I mean, he did recommend that. It would take some legwork, but it's possible.
Great, okay, thank you.
So my main concern is that which I'll just say publicly, my personal main concern about all of this is I'm concerned that we haven't been presented a logic for cutting the days of public court in half for public access to the court, for not for the clerk, but for the court. So personally, that's a concern of mine, and I'll just state that and leave it at that.
I agree. Far more important than locks.
Yeah, Tim, you said in your meeting that the key policy, it was the town definitely has a right to access to the building. Building and individual rooms are the same level, or town has a right to access to the building, but
No, the town has a right to access all offices with the understanding that if there are confidential documents in the court's offices, that they would want to be.
they should be secured in their own
They should
file
be
cabinet.
secured in their own file cabinet. And when we were having that discussion, it is true. The court clerk happened to be at that meeting and participated in the meeting, kind of unexpected. And the court clerk did express dissatisfaction that if we had that, it would be inconvenient to her. Because I guess you'd have to take the files that are on your desk and put them in a drawer and lock them. But that would be the understanding condition, which is why Mark didn't want to have the locks changed when no one was at the court.
The other thing that I do want to mention is, so in the aftermath of that, I reached out to all the other town supervisors in Tompkins County and said, what do you do? Do you have courts that keep exclusive keys? You know, what is that a security issue? And they all said, no, we keep masters. Code officers keep masters for the court offices, clerks. So it's totally, you know, not.
It's common procedure.
It's common procedure. It's standard operating procedure for building management to, and it's not like that, you know, it's just practical. It's a pragmatic issue with managing the building, manage the operation of the building, and making sure that things work properly and work smoothly. So.
I really think the key thing should just be a non-issue. Like, we need to have a date, it's closed. If they choose to be there to protect their things, that's their business. If they don't, that's on them. I mean, like, if there's, you know, my occupation is HIPAA protected, right? Like, people come into Cornell Health to clean. If I have my files that are out on my desk, that's on me. The HIPAA violation is on me if I don't lock up my stuff. If I don't use a screen protector, right? So I don't have, this holds no water for me whatsoever. It's part of their professional obligation to have their documents kept in a confidential way. There's a room, there's a key, we're a small town, we're using shared space, we're a community. Like, I just want to be done with this.
Thank you. I hear you.
And to you know, Tim's point about the much more important issue of, like, why are court time periods cut? I mean, that's a functional issue to serve the public, which really should be the, I think, objective.
But it is true that the justices have the right to set their own hours, et cetera. It just seemed rather weird that this happened somewhat arbitrarily right after we finished the budget. But I was hoping that they would at least explain why they were doing that. And it well could be that they just don't have enough traffic. And if they don't have enough traffic, then that's maybe something we can talk about at a later date. So if we're done with this, and I'll just quickly summarize the zoning commission, because you know that the zoning commission had 2 public hearings on Thursday virtually, and on Sunday, the Thursday public hearing, I believe, had 60 attendees, and the Sunday live public hearing had, I think it was roughly 40. We sent out notices for the public hearing and explanations of the zoning code process to all citizens, really at great expense and trouble. Not trouble, but great expense and labor. And we also posted signs across the town, and the zoning commission put up question boxes that some of you might have seen at various locations across the town. To follow this up, they have sent out an email today through the town listserv with a questionnaire that they developed that they also presented at these public hearings in hopes of getting more public feedback. The public feedback in the boxes was really, frankly, very, very minimal. Say Brookings Market, over 3 weeks, there were two feedbacks. So, and that's heavily trafficked Brookton Market. So they are making a big effort to get as much more feedback on where they're at. They will be holding another public information session, I guess probably mid to late January, at a time when they have made much more specific decisions about the likely direction, so that would then give the public much more to respond to. So it's a layered situation, but But the public meetings seemed to go pretty well. I was unable to go on Sunday, but I've heard various reports, and our planner really did an extraordinary job in organizing the presentation for this and making very, very clear and accessible presentations to the public. So I personally think we're very fortunate to have her. And the next zoning commission meeting is going to be already next Tuesday. And then they're having another one. So that's the 14th. There could be one, I think then the next one is going to be in January. But they're kind of picking up steam in terms of probably even they might have more frequent meetings if they need to in the beginning of the year. So that probably none of this is new to anybody because this was pretty widely disseminated last week, but I just wanted to summarize it.
Great, thanks, Tim. Yep. Is that all you have for your report, Tim?
I could wax and wane.
Only if you do it poetically. I sent my report out on Sunday, I believe, and it's mostly just wrap up stuff. So nothing of any great note to add tonight.
Okay,
Thank you, John.
yeah, thank you, John.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your work on the board, which is summarized nicely.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You can look forward to hearing many more of those thank yous next week.
We'll see, but thanks.
Great, okay. Is that it for committee reports? All right, so I will now offer or ask if anybody has feedback on the November 10th business meeting minutes for Jesse. I have none. I'm seeing head shakes and thumbs up all around and no scratches. I guess not. So, okay. The meetings minutes of November 10th are hereby approved. Thank you, Jesse. And so let's see, agenda items for the December 15th business meeting. I will be, let's see, actually, before we go there, I would like to, I made a note right at the top and then I got down below it. So I think tonight we probably should set the end of year meeting date and time. And I even brought my paper calendar. So let's see. And let's see,
31st is Friday.
the 31st.
Yeah.
Mhm. That's really the end of the year.
Yeah,
Doesn't get much later.
That's to the end of the year for me. There's
29th, Wednesday.
If possible, I would prefer to do it on the 30th, just because of things that I have hanging, but I could be swayed otherwise.
okay, so the 30th would work for you, Tim? How about
Same
other
here.
people?
Same here.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Since I canceled my plane tickets to LA,
Hmm.
how about you, Jesse? Can you chime in on that? Would the 30th work? And I haven't set a time of day yet.
Yeah, I don't know how hard it would be for people to do it during the day. that's gonna be cutting it close. I mean, hopefully I should be all set. That's, the last week is tax week, so I'm just getting everything prepared and set out that week, but hopefully by the 30th, it'll all be sent out and ready to go.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay. Well, we'll make it a short meeting at any rate.
Yep. We want to do it in the morning?
That's okay with me. Is that okay with other people?
Question how early?
Cornell's close.
6:30, is that too early? So how
That
about
late?
9 o'clock? What did,
Yeah.
is it 9 AM?
works for me.
Yep.
I think we have agreement all around, 9 AM on the 30th. Great. So I'll offer a resolution to set the end of year meeting for 9 AM on Thursday, December 30th.
Second.
Second by John. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. So let's see. For next week, I will be transferring the relevant expenditure accounts to reserve accounts. And a resolution specifying wage rates for the wage rate positions of the town. And we also need to specify the terms for the town's employee health insurance offering for employees that take health insurance. So currently, I've been trying to have the town policy match the Teamsters policy. And currently, employees are paying 16% of the premium, and they're funded with an HRA funded to the out-of-pocket maximum. So spoiler alert a little bit, but so we did come to agreement with the highway unit on terms for the new contract. So that's good. And one thing we will be doing, I'll explain it to you later, the exact terms, but we are transitioning to a situation where new employees will be given a health savings account funded at for the first year at 100% of the out-of-pocket maximum, and then years after that at 50% of the out-of-pocket maximum. So so given that's where we're going with that contract, I'm going to propose that as well, and I meant for the town. The question would be is whether we would just have it be 50% of the out-of-pocket maximum from the get-go, or also have it funded 100% the first year and then 50% thereafter. So anyway, if you have thoughts about that, I'm all ears, but I do want to formally adopt that next week, so that you could either weigh in now or think about it, or, yeah, Tim.
Well, I just think we should be equitable with the other staff. If we're offering 100% for the first year to the highway staff, we should offer that to the other staff as well. Personally, that's what I think.
Okay, I agree with that. I see head nod from John, affirmative, and Catherine as well. So that's great. Okay. I like that. Great. And also I hope that we have a draft of the revised contract back from the union, and I sent a draft to our attorney today, so hopefully I hope I'll be able to present that to you next week for approval, so that we can move forward with that. What I just described was the most significant item.
You and Cal deserve our thanks. Congratulations for
Yeah,
getting this accomplished in such quick speed.
Yeah, this
Thank
is
you.
the best one, I think, since I've been on the board, actually. Nice job.
thank you, John. And thanks, Cal, for supporting the
I
effort.
think we had a really good support from
Angelo,
Angelo.
yep,
He was very knowledgeable and
I think he helped.
he had a good rapport.
He did. He did. Great. So with that, I will are there any other suggestions for the business meeting next week that I've forgotten about?
I don't know if you said discussion of
Oh, yes.
the LaBerge report.
Yes, I think that's important.
Yep.
Yep.
Can we get an update on where we are with streetlights? Next week?
We can. I'll give you that next week. It'll be better than what I give you now.
And the public hearing, right?
Yep,
I didn't hear that. What was that?
public hearing on the local law.
Oh, that's right. Yep. Thank you, Jesse.
Mark, when are we going to have another discussion about what to do with our COVID funding?
We could have that next week, although, yeah, I don't know.
I'd just like to keep this on the table
Sure.
so we don't forget about it.
Sure. No, I agree. And that's why I spoke up tonight during the LaBerge presentation when I saw that.
Yeah.
I found that pretty surprising because it certainly didn't resonate with absolutely anything that I've read about it. So that was interesting.
Yeah, likewise.
Sounded to me like kind of wishful thinking.
Okay. So we could certainly have a brief discussion next week. I could try to get more information. I don't have more than I've reported before. Yeah. I mean, I would-
Comment
So
for
we can,
Tim.
so we can keep thinking about it.
Yep, I hear you. Yeah.
Comment for Tim. I don't know where that comes from in terms of LaBerge. It surprised me a little bit too. If you have a form of a question that you might like to put that in, that would be a really good one because
Good idea.
I mean, they do have their fingers on the pulse of a lot of the stuff. So if there's something they kind of have some insight on, that's awesome. But
Right.
yeah, I'd like to know that too.
Yeah, that's good. And you guys, I mean, one of the other things that's likely to help us down the road probably is the new infrastructure bill.
Right.
It's hard to believe that there wouldn't be ways for us to capitalize on that for this project.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sort of the definition of.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I will just repeat John's request for us to send him any requests or for clarification or questions or, modifications to pass on to LaBerge right away, so they can be thinking about that. So, great. Okay. Great. So if there's nothing further, I will offer a motion to enter executive session. Do I have a second on that?
You do, and I'll be right back in just a minute.
Okay, so second from
Mark.
John.
Right
Yes.
before you do that, since Nathan came tonight to discuss the Downey Road, the seasonal stuff,
Sure.
or is that going to be discussed before we go, or is that now up for discussion for the town board to have privately?
Oh, okay. So we did have a brief discussion during privilege of the floor with Nathan about that. So
Jesse's saying
don't really have
our
anything.
conversation about it, Mark.
Catherine?
I think Jesse's saying, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like our conversation about it.
So would you like a little privacy? Is that what you're getting at?
No, no.
No, not at all.
No.
So I guess,
um,
so wouldn't we need Bobby here in order to discuss this?
I think, yeah, so as I said before, I mean, I think we can pretty quickly address the issue of addressing.
Right.
Just by reaching out to the county, and I think we can figure that out pretty quickly.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that, we're covering the grounds.
Okay,
Asking the right question to the right people.
yeah,
So,
okay,
like I said, whatever I can do to help move this along. I feel like I've been talking to the people that I knew the best.
yeah.
So,
That's-
what are the next steps that I can do?
Jesse,
So-
Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So I was just, I know that Nathan touched on the question about the address, but what I gathered from his letter to the board was a separate question of, is this even a possibility, being that it's a minimum maintenance road? And I just wondered if anyone was going to give clarity on or discussion on that
Okay.
before he leaves tonight.
Thank you.
Okay,
Jesse.
and
Yep.
I would just say flat out, based on, what I shared with you today, it's definitely a possibility. So.
Wait,
a
Mark,
minimum maintenance-
what is a
a minimum-
possibility?
Catherine? I'm sorry.
What are
So-
you saying is a possibility?
So from what I understand, assigning an address on a minimum maintenance road is possible, is that in question?
No, not the addressing part of it. It's the access to that address on a seasonal road.
Okay,
Am I wrong, Nathan? I'm sorry. That's what I've gathered from speaking and reading your letter today.
Well, maybe to clarify, first and foremost, it's getting an address, so that
Right.
it could potentially grow into whatever it wants to be, whether it's a residence, whether it's, something that, it's not necessarily on the grid, but to have an address for a potential residence. It's my understanding that by issuing an address, it would be the obligation then of the town to service that, and I understand year round. And maybe that's something that can be waived during the seasonal months, or maybe, like I mentioned in the proposal, maybe some portion of this property is granted access to the town to put whatever infrastructure is
for a turnaround or
for a
something.
turnaround.
Sure,
In an
Yeah.
ideal world, the whole road would be serviced for the landowners, but,
so that sounds great.
Well,
Based on the information I have, I think we can figure this out really quickly. So,
but it seems to me a little too ambiguous, just right at the present, like, does the owner who has a resident, the owner, do they want to turn it into a year-round residence? It's not like, the town should also,
okay,
be wanting to, upgrade the road and provide, a higher level of service just because it would be nice, or,
right,
if it's needed.
right, well.
There's a lot of things that would be nice.
Right, and maybe I can clarify, at the very least, you can think of it as an Airbnb cabin in the woods. If there are a few structures on the property that were already there when the land was bought, you can see it in all the.
Yeah, or if are gonna do like a rural Airbnb and need,
okay.
so, it just,
So Cal raises a good point. Maybe we need more information about the
Yeah, I just,
particulars, but we
wanna
can
know that-
work on that.
yeah, that, and it would be nice if the property owner versus a proxy could come.
Right,
Just,
I can certainly get her involved. You know, I see this, and we have been talking about this as, you know, it's an Airbnb, it's a potential rental property,
Yeah.
something like that, not necessarily.
Those sort of things are very popular, you know,
Right.
or becoming more popular, and yeah, but it just like, we just like to have a little more of a, you know, plan rather than, at least as I read it right now, it's kind of, well, this would be nice. Well,
Right.
you know, yeah, just give us some more, you know, particulars and, you know, yeah, I need year-round access because I'd like to,
Rent it for this, or, yeah. I will come back with just clarification. I can bring Carlin as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to save her some of the legwork.
yeah, to start out with.
So that I can just get this ball
Or,
rolling.
or a timeline, well, yes, I'd
That
like
sounds
to in 5 years, or
Yeah.
I'd like to by next winter, you know.
Well, and I can give you some of that right now. The target is by the end of next summer to have this as a rentable property.
Okay, that's the sort of thing we want,
Yes, okay, well, there you go.
yeah, but, you know, and, you know, just kind of the landowner and see, you know, seeing something that, you know, building permits that need, you know, have been,
Well, we
you know,
need
things
to-
that have been, things
Well,
that we
there-
done.
I mean, guys, there's also,
I think
I
we
mean,
need to
there
stop.
are fundamental other issues that would have to be discussed.
Exactly.
A,
Yeah.
with highway, B, regarding cost, C, regarding potential escrows. We've been through this before with other
Yeah.
properties, and it is very complex.
There's a
So,
public hearing
so-
process. There's,
Right.
we have a local law on the books already, which I sent out over email.
so as much as
So
we'd like to say, we would like to be amenable, I mean, I just want to be fair to say it is potentially complex.
It is. I think, yeah, so I didn't understand the particular details, so I think it is complex, but we can figure it out, so.
Or we can discuss it, but we might, I
Yeah,
think it's premature for us to promise that we will be able to figure it out. You know what I mean, Mark, just to be fair.
okay, thank you.
I mean, and really, I'm just here to kick this off. I don't know what I don't know, which is why I'm talking with the people at the top of the food chain.
Okay.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, you gotta start the ball rolling somewhere.
Yep.
thanks, Nate. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
And as I understand, so there would be a meeting not tomorrow with the second Wednesday, but it would be the following. It's December 15th, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Should I plan to come back for that, to talk more? Should I?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think this is something we should handle in the office, that I think at least we
Okay,
can
I'll
start
come back
there.
to the
If you
office.
feel like you need to come to the town board, you should always do that.
yeah,
But I think we should start with information exchange that Jesse and I can help you with. So
sounds fantastic.
yeah, I'm sorry,
Don't be sorry, this is great. It's great to meet you all. And some of you, of course, I already know, but I really appreciate you guys taking some time out of your evening.
great, okay, thank you. All right, so.
If I'm not maybe needed, I'll take off. It sounds like my portion is done.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you all again for a little bit of your time.
Okay.
You're
take
welcome.
care.
Good night, Nate.
Right.
Thanks, Jesse.
So I'll just do it again. I'll offer a motion to enter executive session.
I'll second it
think,
again.
John seconded it. Okay, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, great. So whatever the